Good morning, my Algebra 2 class. I hope you all had a great night and are looking forward to learning the second half of Lesson 5.2, Polynomials, Linear Factors, and Zeros. So today for the lesson, you're going to need 5 things. First, you'll need some paper to write on. 2, you're going to need a pencil to take notes with. 3, a basic calculator, either a handheld one or one off of the computer or from your cell phone. 4, you're going to need access to Desmos. This is an online graphing program that you're going to need, and we will look at this a little bit later in the lesson, and we'll give you a chance to pause the screen, and we'll talk about where to find this program at. And the final thing you're going to need is your homework 52, which you'll use at the end of the lesson, which you'll get a chance to practice everything that we have learned today. On Wednesday's lesson, we will go over homework 51 and homework 52, and making sure you understand all of those answers correctly before getting prepared for your next quiz. So, without further ado, here we go. All right, so the first thing we're going to learn today is finding the multiplicity of a zero. So here we have zeros. We have factors. We have a first factor. We have a second factor. And we have a third factor. And here in our first factor, you notice that there's this little exponent out here. That means that a factor appears more than one time. Here, you notice that in these two cases, we don't have an exponent. That means that factor only appears once, which means these, however many times that our factor appears, is in fact called our multiplicity. So what we're going to do is take each of our factors like we did yesterday, our x plus 1, and our x minus 1, and our x minus 2. Here are our 3 individual factors that we have. We want to find the zeros because we're trying to find the multiplicities of a zero. So we're going to take each factor, x plus 1, and we'll equal it to 0. X minus 1 and equal it to 0, and x minus 2 and we'll equal it to 0 as well. We will solve each individual equation for the variable x. So our first one, x plus 1, we'll do minus 1 because that is the opposite operation, and then 0 minus 1. Plus 1 minus 1 cross out, leaving me with x is equal to negative 1. On our second factor, x minus 1, opposite operation is plus 1. So then we have 0 plus 1. Our minus 1 and plus 1 cross out, leaving me with x is equal to 1. We have x minus 2, opposite operation is plus 2, equals 0 plus 2. Minus 2 plus 2 cross out, leaving me with x is equal to 2. So now I have my 3 zeros, negative 1, 1, and 2. But they don't want us to just find the zeros. They want us to find the zeros and the multiplicity, which means how many times does that 0 appear. Our first factor, x minus 1, equals, this is our x equals negative 1, so x equals negative 1. But we have a multiplicity because we had a 2 on the outside of that factor, making this have a multiplicity of 2. Our second factor, x equals 1, did not have an exponent, so it has an understood multiplicity of 1. And our final factor, x equals 2, also did not have a different variable number on the outside. It still had a power of 1, so making us have a multiplicity of 1. So our final answers are the ones we have here in our box, which is x is equal to negative 1, multiplicity of 2, because again we have our 2. X equals 1, multiplicity of 1 because we have a 1 understood exponent. And x equals 2, multiplicity of 1 because we had, again, an understanding of 1 for our exponent. Now we're going to get some practice. You may freeze your screen or pause your video, however you have at home, how it's set up for you, and you will try each of these problems to find the zeros and their multiplicities. When you feel like you have a good understanding and you have tried all and you would like to check your work, then go ahead and resume the video, and there'll be explanations below each one explaining how we get to the final answers. Good luck and hope you get them all right. So set my factors: x equals to 0, x minus 1 equals to 0. Cannot do anything with x equals 0, so it stays x equals 0. X minus 1, the opposite operation is plus 1, so 0 plus 1. Minus 1 plus 1 cross out, so x is equal to 1. So x, my zeros, there was no exponent attached to that x, so it has an understood multiplicity of 1. My x equals 1 had an exponent of 3. This means I have a multiplicity of 3. I only had 2 factors, so I have 2 zeros, and these are my final answers. I'll take my 3 factors, 2x plus 3, and equal it to 0. So I've got 2x plus 3, opposite operation is minus 3, plus 3 minus 3 going as weighting with 2x is equal to negative 3. Divide by 2 because the opposite operation of multiplication is division. The 2's cross cancel out, leaving me with x equals negative 3 over 2, because this fraction does not reduce any lower and would turn into a decimal. So I have my next factor, x plus 4, will equal it to 0. So x plus 4, opposite is minus 4, is equal to 0 minus 4. Plus 4 minus 4 cross out, so x is equal to negative 4. And then my final one, x plus 1 is equal to 0. So to x plus 1 minus 1 is equal to 0 minus 1. Plus 1 minus 1 cross out, leaving me with x is equal to negative 1. So I will look at my exponents to each of my factors. I have a 4, a 5, and a 3. That means my multiplicities will be different for each 0. So my first 0, x is equal to negative 3 over 2. Since the exponent was a 4, I have a multiplicity of 4. My second 0, x is equal to negative 4, had an exponent of 5, which means I have a multiplicity of 5. And my final 0, x equals negative 1, had an exponent of 3, which means I have a multiplicity of 3. These are my final zeros and their multiplicities. We'll work the final example. Set my first factor x equals to 0 and x minus 4. Can't do anything with x equals 0. So opposite of minus 4 is plus 4. Minus 4 plus 4 cross out, leaving me with x is equal to 4. My first 0, x equals 0, did not have an exponent other than 1, so I have a multiplicity of 1. And my second 0, x equals 4, had an exponent of 2, which means I have a multiplicity of 2. 2 factors, 2 zeros, and their multiplicities. And that is my final answer for our practice problem. I hope you guys did fantastic. If so, give yourself a pat on the back and whoop whoop in the house. And here we go on to example number 5. Example number 5 is going to be talking about relative maximum and minimum values. For this component, you're going to need your Desmos. Because over here on the left is a picture of the graph that we have drawn in regards to our Desmos. And I'm going to throw the same equation into our Desmos online so you can see how this works and show you how I got exactly to this picture. Then we'll return back to the slide and we will show you how to find the maximum and the minimum values. So in a graph, you have high points and low points. Maximum value is the high point on the graph. And a minimum value is the low point on our graph. Oh, I spelled low point. It's really bad wrong. Sorry, guys. All right, so we have our high point, we have our low point. This is our high point, making this the maximum value. And this is our low point, making it our minimum value. So now I'm going to show you how we type our equation x cubed plus 3x squared minus 24x into our Desmos program, and then I will show you how to get to this picture. Okay, at this time, I have pulled up the screen for Desmos. In the top, in the search engine bar, it says desmos.com/calculator. You can type this and it will take you straight here. You can type in Desmos and search, and it will pull up Desmos graphing calculator, and you can select there as well. Once you get there, you have a box where there'll be multiple graphs you can graph, but right now we're going to graph one. You will click inside your box, and once you do, you'll put in the equation that we're looking for, which is our x. You type in x, the variable x. To get the exponent, you hold down your shift key and press the number 6, and it moves the cursor up to where you can put in the exponent of 3. Then you use your right arrow key and you arrow over to the right. That takes you off of the exponent. Then we want to put in the rest of our equation, which is plus 3x, and again, to make it squared, we press the shift button and the number 6, and it brings it up. We type in our 2 for our x squared, we move it over, and then minus 24x. As you can see, your graph looks a little bit different than the one that I have shown here on our page. What I have done is shrunken our graph to make it look smaller so that we can see more. So what we're going to do is this. First, let me move this guy out of the way. Okay, so you can see here you have, whoops. Okay, that did not work out. All right, we're going to hit this minimize button, and each time this little minus button, what the minus button is going to do is going to keep getting the graph smaller and smaller until we can get the picture into view. And you can use your mouse button to move it around, and you can see now, we can see a little bit more of what our graph would look like as we were doing our lesson on the page before. Now it looks a little more similar to this picture. Now the difference you notice here on this page, you can see we have dots here, we have a black dot here, a black dot here, and right now you do not have any dots. So all we have to do is click on our graph, and once we click on it, now we can see the 3 gray dots here and a gray dot here. By clicking on that gray dot, it turns it black, and that gives me the high point of negative 480, and I click on the bottom, a low point of negative 28. So now I'm going to take us back to our main screen. So this is telling us that our relative maximum is at negative 4,80. And our relative minimum is at negative 28. Now, sometimes your your graph is not always really pretty and have complete whole numbers. Sometimes you will have decimal values. If you have decimal values in the directions on your homework and your quiz and your test, it will tell you how to round them. For this homework assignment, we will round our answers to 3 decimal places as needed. So we're going to move on and we're going to look at some examples and we're going to show them to you again. So during the practice time, please feel free to pause it, try putting the values into your calculator as you see fit, and see how you get the answers here by doing your Desmos. And I will put the values and I will show the graph coming up, and I will show you how I get to those values at points as well. So good luck, and I hope you guys do a fantastic job. So I'm going to start with our first equation. I'm going to go into my Desmos. I'm going to click on the X to clear out the graph. So now my graph is here. And then I'll click on this menu button here. And I'm going to say, give me a new blank graph. And that resets everything and all the windows back to the original window so you don't have any old window values in there. So we're going to put in our first equation, which is x cubed. So x holding the shift down at the same time pressing the 6. Putting in my cube value, plus 4x squared, and then arrowing to the right to get off of those exponents, and then minus 5x. For this graph, I can simply just bring it down a little bit and minimize, and I can see where my high point is located and where my low point is located. And I can see that my high point, or my relative maximum, is at negative 3.189. Notice how these guys are already at 3 decimal places. So you didn't have to do any rounding. All you had to do is write in your values. So my relative maximum value is at negative 3.189, comma, 24.193. And my relative minimum is at 0.523. And negative 1.378. I'll go ahead and go and do our next equation. So again, just like in the first equation, we'll go ahead and we'll go ahead and pull up our screen. We'll exit this guy out and we'll ask to get a new blank graph. Okay, so we have first equation will be negative 4x to the third, so negative 4x to the third, an arrow to the right, plus 12x squared, plus 4x minus 12. So this graph is not showing all my high points or low points, so I use the zoom out button and zoom out. Now I can see my low and my high, so my relative maximum and my relative minimum. So I have my two values, so my relative maximum is at 2.155. Oops, did it again. Sorry, guys. Relative maximum is at 2.155 and 12.317. And my relative minimum is at negative 0.155 and negative 12.317. Here is my relative maximum and my relative minimum for example number 2. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to go back to our Desmos. We're going to clear out our screen with the X, and then we're going to request a new blank graph. We'll type in our first one, which is x cubed, arrow off, minus 7x squared, arrow to the right, plus 7x plus 15. In order to see our whole picture, we'll zoom out, and I'll just drag it down a bit so that way I can see everything. Click on my graph, there's my relative maximum, and here is my relative minimum. So my relative maximum is at 0.569. Sorry guys, I forgot what it said. 0.569, 0.569, and 16.901. Then my relative minimum is located at 4.097. Again, these are all beautiful to 3 decimal places, so there's no need to round. And at negative 5.049. Here are my relative maximum and my relative minimums for each of these graphs that we have. We have now completed the lesson for today. So what you'll need to do at this time is take out homework 52, lesson 5.2b, and begin working on those assignments. On this assignment, you'll notice that there will be explanations as well for you to see how we did these things. If you get stuck and you're in the Remind app and you're not sure where to go or what to do, please feel free to text me to Remind. Please feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be more than glad to help you in any way that I can. And again, on Wednesday, we will go ahead and make sure that we check over the homework, and then we'll have an online assignment for you to get prepared for the quiz that you will take later in the week. You guys have a great night and work hard.